I'm going to record on the computer.
There we go.
Sorry, Randy, where were you? This is why I need
No,
it takes a village. So
I didn't want to
got,
interrupt your beautiful introduction.
Yeah, no worries. I'll do the introduction at the end or something. So with that, for those of you that are live, go for it, Randy. Randy and I have been working together just really quick. Randy and I have been working together for as long as I've been here. He's been an American Solar and Roofing customer, but he's also been very involved in solar policy. And so as soon as I started seeing the signs go up, literally on my way to, to go grocery shopping with my family, I gave him a call on a Saturday or a Sunday and said, hey, do you want to do this event? And I appreciate you saying yes and getting all the candidates rallied. So let me just kick it off with you, Randy, on again, why did you decide to run for the SRP board, again? And what are some things that you're looking forward to here in the future?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joy. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to send this out to your customers. And I've been your customer since 2010, actually on 2 different properties. So I really appreciate you in the industry as well. Yeah. The main reason that I decided to run for the board originally was in 2015 when SRP decided to, put egregious rate plans onto solar customers. They called it the self-generation plan. And it just really bothered me that they were going to increase my rate personally 315% year over year, because they, gave me money in 2010 to put solar panels on my house. And then in 2015, they're trying to penalize me for having solar panels on my house. And I just thought that was not right. And so I went down to the pricing process and learned that, SRP has their own board and didn't even really realize that, and had never voted in the elections, didn't have any clue, had been a customer for, 15 plus years by that point. And I said, well, that's interesting. How do I become a board member then, right? And so I actually tried to run in 2016 and found out that the property that I owned wasn't actually eligible to vote because they haven't updated their voting districts since 1937. So I said, okay, well, I'll go find people that are in the eligible voting districts to run. And I got 2 people elected to the at-large seats in 2016. I was basically the campaign manager for them. And it's been an interesting 4 years since I got elected. I actually went and bought a house in Tempe in order to run. So that's how I was able to run in 2018. And the house, well, the interesting part about it is that we were able to get all 4 of the at-large seats won within 2 cycles because it's a fair election. It's 1 person, 1 vote. And we were able to win those seats very easily. And I just want to stay on the board, and I'm trying to run for the district race this time, which is or division race, I should say, which is an acreage-based voting. And that's where it becomes difficult, because if you own 100 acres, you get 100 votes. If you own 0.01 acres, you get 0.01 votes. So I'm really wanting to get reelected so that we can continue to push solar policies, or renewable energy overall policies at SRP. And I really want to just improve the overall transparency of the data that's being presented by the board and management to the public, so that we know we are getting the right thing for our price, for what we're paying for. It's really important to me.
When you had meant, so a follow-up, when you had mentioned obviously the different ways that people get elected, that doesn't matter though to anybody who's voting, right? They just need to get a ballot and they fill out the ballot, right? Like that's it. There's nothing complex to them. I understand for you, strategy wise, it makes a difference. But to the people that are listening or participating today, they just need to request their ballot.
That's right.
And they fill out their name to the candidate.
Most important message. That's our most important message for today, is request your ballot.
Okay, great.
If you do not request a ballot, SRP will not send you a ballot.
They will not. And we'll share some of that detail after, or in a little bit on this. And then really quick, the candidates, y'all, are amazing, like just amazing. Such a breath of fresh air. The knowledge that you're bringing to this conversation and to the board is just, it's just beautiful, really. So Randy, can you just give 30 seconds just of what you do outside of running for office and pushing for clean energy?
Sure. I've been a computer programmer for 23 years. I got my undergraduate degree from Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio as a computer engineer. And then I got my master's degree working full-time at Columbia University in New York. And I'm just a engineer at heart, and I try to optimize things. That's what I'm always doing. It's all about optimization. How do we get the most for the least cost? That type of thing. And I just think that the utility industry is just prime for change there. It's just been a very set structure for a long time, and we need to figure out how to really look at the cost and the benefits of our energy generation.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Data. I was just
yeah.
listening to a podcast that you can even just prove happiness out of data. So anything, so I appreciate that. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Let me move it over to Kathy. Kathy, if you could go off mute and just share a little bit about, again, who you are, why you're running, and what you're looking forward to when you win on how to impact SRP's board or the council, and again, more specifically, the consumers and the ratepayers in the territory.
Hi, Joy. Thank you. And thank you for this forum. I really appreciate it. I'm Kathy Moore Almeida, and I'm running because I am concerned about climate resiliency. I have a 19-year-old daughter who is a really avid climate activist, and she really started my path as a climate activist, which we've been doing together for about 11 years. I am concerned about my daughter's future, everybody else's kids' futures. I'm concerned about the viability of the planet, and I really support renewable energy because it decreases air pollution. I have 5 degrees, 2 undergrad, a master's in psychology, and then I got my doctorate in 2010 in psychology as well. And I'm a psychotherapist privately. And when I'm not doing work, I'm doing a lot of art making for activist type activities.
Awesome. And then what are you, I see your why. Is there anything specific within the board that I know if you've been to any of those board meetings, or is there anything specific on that you are looking forward to moving the conversation forward on? Is there something you're hanging your hat on policy wise that you're really targeting?
Well, I really want SRP to increase its renewable energy portfolio. And I also want them to make a carbon commitment. And then the other thing I'd really like to see is in addition to increased transparency, an increase in diversity of the board members. It's pretty unilateral right now. And so, being a female is increasing the diversity of the board.
Yeah. Okay. So increasing the renewable energy portfolio, a carbon commitment, and then obviously the diversity of the board. I've been to those board meetings after, getting through 3 locked doors and making public requests to get in. So I see that you on that. Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to circle back around with you after we get these specifically on that carbon commitment. So if you want to just be thinking about what that means to you and breaking that down, that would be great. So while we put a pin in that conversation, Krista, if you could go off mute and just again introduce yourself, talk about your why, and how you're going to impact this SRP board when you're elected.
Yeah, so I'm Krista O'Brien. I'm an Arizona native, and I'm seeking election for the SRP District Board as an at-large seat 12 candidate. During the day, I work as a program manager of sustainability practices at ASU. I work in ASU operations, focusing on environmental data and strategic initiatives with partners. So previously, I had served 2 terms on the board of Trees Matter, one as a board member and one as a board chair. Trees Matter is a nonprofit in Phoenix, Arizona, with a mission to inspire and promote an increased tree canopy in the valley. And they actually are funded by SRP's Shade Tree program. I studied at ASU. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Sustainable Materials, Energy, and Technology. And really, the main reasons I decided to run for the SRP board was, for one, to provide larger solar incentives for customers. So I believe leveraging rooftop solar to create a more renewable energy source of solar microgrids in the valley would not only help create a more sustainable energy source, but also help offset large loads during peak times over the summer when the grid is already stressed. And also looking at helping the most pressing environmental issues facing SRP customers. So we have a problem with pollution and the urban heat island effect in the valley. And our customers are reliant on their energy provider through these summer months, almost up to half a year, regardless of that source or the externalities that are contributed because of it. So increasing the renewable energy sources for SRP as well, kind of mirroring what Kathy said.
Lovely. Again, y'all are just amazing. When you're talking about just maybe, again, as I mentioned to Kathy, maybe me circling back around on that carbon commitment, if I can, again, if I can ask you just to consider a little bit more about what it feels like to you or what it looks like to you on modifying the rate structures as we have today to draw in more distributed energy. And even more so those microgrids, because I know, there are a lot of people who cannot participate and put on rooftop, put those solar on, but maybe there are places in which we can do more microgrids and have better policy around that. So if you can noodle that around, once I can bring you back in here in a few minutes and just have that conversation if it feels good to you. All right, Mark. Last but not least, go ahead and finish that off again on who you are, why you're running, and what are some things that you're really looking forward to bringing to the board when elected.
Sure. So yeah, again, thanks for having me. I'm Mark Mulligan. Thanks for having me and the rest of the SRP Clean Energy team. So I am an Arizona native. I graduated ASU with a computer information systems degree. And throughout my whole career, I've been at high-tech companies helping customers with adopt and innovate with computer and cloud services. And I'm at a leading cloud services provider right now. So I'm running for the district, the district voting area 8. I'm a running mate of Randy's and for the council. And Randy and I go back, we were both in the paper back when SRP first launched its rate plan announcement, I think December 4th, or maybe it was November 26th, depending on how you slice it, 2014, and we found each other. And then we went on to be co-campaign managers to get 4 candidates elected, including Randy in 2018, clean energy candidates, and then 2 more in 2020. So here we are running mates in District 8. So it's basically Tempe and parts of Western Mesa and parts of Chandler. And what the council does, which is different, is does bylaws, does bond issues, and does board compensation. So what will I do? If I am elected, when I am elected, I will go into those bylaws. That's where the bylaws are that are about the voting rights, the voting areas, who can vote, all the restrictions, frankly, of who can vote. So that's the part that I'll dig into is my commitment, along with being on this team with Clean Energy. I'm also an American Solar customer from 2012. No coincidence. I think it is a coincidence, actually, but that's me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being a customer. I run into folks all the time. We're like, oh. So thanks for being a customer. And really tapping in. I live in SRP. I got in right before that, crazy rate change on my expansion to carry, my family's load. But definitely we'll want to circle back around with you because I am in the SRP territory, but I cannot vote. I've requested my ballot and they've told me I cannot. So I can pay their rates, but I cannot vote. So having you do a little bit of a deep dive again, on that and why you're going to be focusing on that. And again, explaining to, again, those of us who are participating today or that are going to be watching this later, as Krista had mentioned. All right, well, what I appreciate again about all of these candidates, and again, hopefully everybody who's listening is that there's just such a diversity of conversation. I think that everybody aligns obviously with distributed solar and rate making. But what we can see is that this board does make some big decisions for all the SRP customers, and it's about 1 million folks. So SRP is about as big as APS, but completely regulated differently. So I'm gonna get curious here with Randy, if you could, and if you could just, since you've been serving on the board, can you just give us a little bit more insight into what does the day-to-day board look like, and why is it so important for those of us participating today or listening later on to request a ballot and vote? And like, how many big decisions are you making that we just don't even know that you're doing? We all care about that national news. We all care about the global news. What's happening in our backyard that we need to really be participating in?
Thanks, Joy. Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I ran for the board, is because it is local and it impacts every single one of us. I have no desires of being a politician at all, never did, never will, really. But this is so important to our backyard, right? And it's very critical. Unlike the other utilities in the state of Arizona, SRP is not regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission. So in other utilities, they have to take their rates to the commission. In order to increase or decrease rates, they have to get approval from the Corporation Commission. With SRP, it's actually done by the SRP Board. So that is probably one of the biggest important things that we do as board members, is set the rates for our ratepayers. As Krista mentioned, we're getting hotter and hotter and having to run our AC more and more. It was 89 in March, yesterday or whatever, right? So it's just getting way more expensive, and we need to be there to make sure that we're using the lowest cost of energy that we can. So that's the first major thing, is right.
Yeah, with determining lowest cost of energy, 30 seconds, what does that rate making process look like maybe for SRP versus APS?
Yeah, so what is in the actual integrated resource plan for SRP, the process says that if we're adding new generation, we always do an all source RFP. Well, that's what the rule says. Okay. Currently that didn't happen in the Coolidge thing. We'll talk about that later. Okay. But what we try to do is we really try to look at the cost of service across all of the customers and make sure everybody is paying their fair share of the infrastructure, the fixed cost of the grid, essentially. Now, unfortunately, during the rate case that happened when they added the demand charges and the additional fixed cost for the solar customers, in my opinion, they discriminated against solar customers, right? Yeah. Why should a solar customer have to pay $12 more just to be attached to the grid for no apparent reason? They didn't do anything different to my house in order to add solar panels to my house, right? They didn't upgrade the transformer, they didn't upgrade the wires, they didn't upgrade anything. Yeah, literally they just charge you $12 more.
Have you gone through because again, I know the experience. Where I'm kind of getting at is I've been through pretty much all the rate cases for APS, and I knew publicly what was going on. I have no idea publicly what's going on at the SRP when rate cases go through. The public input is limited to nothing on the SRP rate making process. Would you agree?
Not exactly. They do have a public comment session. At this time, it was at the Tempe History
How many?
Society or something. Huh?
How many? Like one?
How many what?
Public processes?
Oh yeah. So I've only been through one rate process so far. Yeah. And we didn't have a lot of input from the public to be 100% open. That's because they don't tell people about the problem.
Right.
So
will this group of people then now elected, will you be encouraging more public input so that we can continue to keep costs low and increase transparency?
100%. That's my main goal, is transparency for everything.
Okay.
We SRP is notoriously not getting stakeholder or ratepayer input when it comes to making these very large
Right.
decisions. So
Other than rate making, I know that like line siting, like all the big transmission lines, is the board involved in that?
yeah, so the other thing we do, well, there's the two other major things. The first one I would say is policy setting.
Okay.
So like, for example, we do have a 2035 sustainability plan now. That is something that I'm very proud of. I was very involved in the process. It's not as aggressive as I would hope for. However, at least we're using the word sustainability and we're using the vernacular, right?
Yep.
I really am proud of the fact that it's not just on the sustainability plan has 6 different pillars. It's not just on carbon, it's on water usage, it's on electric vehicle adoption, it's on carbon reduction, it's on waste management, supply chain. There's a lot of really good things in the sustainability plan. We just need to make it a little better. So hopefully if we get some more advocates onto the board, we'll be able to address that and make changes to it. The last thing that we do is the resource planning. So essentially, SRP is going through a process right now. It's the brand new process. They used to kind of do resource planning as a game where they say, okay, this is our load and this is how much we need to generate and this is, you know, what we're going to do, and then they throw it over the wall to transmission and distribution to figure out how to do that, right? Now they're calling it integrated system planning instead of integrated resource planning, which I think is a good thing, because they need to look at the system as a whole, not just as, you know, here's how we generate and here's how we use it, right?
Yeah.
So the integrated system planning is really trying to get to that point where we make the grid more bi-directional, more you know,
Dynamic.
make us understand how to use the resources that are distributed across the 1.1 million customers to the benefit of the utility as well. So
Awesome. Okay, so a lot there. What I hope, again, everybody listening now or in the future is every candidate, everybody who's elected to the board, they are making large decisions. And again, it's directly impacting in the bill that you receive every month to if you are, you know, voting for the planet, voting for fresh air, you're really wanting to focus on these candidates to really get us to the next level of where we need to be, as Randy pointed out on resource planning. But then again, I'm going to go back to Kathy here on, you know, the carbon commitment, you know, so let's, if we can, Kathy, if you can go into a little bit of that, again, doing a deeper dive on the things that you're going to have to think about when you're on the board, and you're going to really ask your other teammates here to be thinking about when you get onto that board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, you know, really thinking about future generations and what we're leaving our children is paramount. So I'm going to challenge people that are not thinking in the long term and thinking about, you know, just the immediate to, you know, really consider the impact of their decisions. You know, our past decade was the warmest on record.
Mm-hmm.
And we're set up to have a temperature increase by about 3 to 5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. So we really need to reduce our fossil fuel production roughly 6% between 2020 and 2030. I am seeing you know, data that is saying that we need to be at 0% net carbon emissions by 2030. So I'm really interested in getting as much carbon sequestered and as much carbon emissions reduced as possible, as quickly as possible.
And then how have you been able to, I know obviously having a job and running for the office, you might not have been able to scalpel in what that would look like, but just to get curious here, have you been able to start looking at maybe some decisions that the utility has made in the past that you would now question, or you would ask
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, clearly,
reevaluate?
the rate case that was back in 2015, where it ended up putting in a lot of unnecessary charges on the consumer, needs to be renounced essentially, and we need to be making decisions that are pro-solar, pro-renewable energy.
Okay, so basically, making it so that the rates that we currently have in place are less punitive, so that more solar, whatever that looks like. Again, my experience has been it was really problematic to the residential customers. I haven't looked at it from and I've gotten some feedback on the larger users or utility scale. Anything else on just that, again, that carbon commitment and or the diversity of the board that you talked about? Obviously getting you elected is critical path, but why is a diverse voice required?
Well, we need a board that's reflective of our community, so that we can get all issues addressed and given concern to. So I would really, for example, I would love to see more ethnic diversity on the board. That would be fabulous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just everybody has different voices and everybody has different viewpoints that they come from.
Exactly.
Got it. And then I'm just looking to see anything that you want to speak about. And again, I'll weave back in. I know that we're going to move into the Coolidge SRP plant here in a second, but anything that you would like to start off on that generation station, or do you want to pump that to one of your teammates here?
I'm not happy about it.
Okay. Can you give a little bit of background for those of us who maybe don't know as much?
Sure. So SRP is in the process of getting a gas expansion project put down in Randolph, Arizona. And it's being increased by 16 turbines or 820 megawatts of energy. And we need to be, at a time when we need to be reducing our dependence on fossil fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes no sense. It's ecologically unsound. It's not a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add my color to it. Again, when Randy gave me a call and said, hey, Mayday, Mayday, it got slammed through in a normal rate making process at the Corporation Commission, which is, again, the fourth branch of government that regulates all the other utilities. It never would have been able to go as quickly as it did. There would have been a lot more public involvement. There would have been a lot more meetings. I personally requested a meeting with top leadership, and it was canceled. And one more reason why I'm hosting you all today, because if people are refusing to have a conversation with stakeholders who've been participatory in the rate making process for 21 years, if they're going to cancel our meetings, I feel like they're just really not caring about anything that's going on. They're not placing it as a really a bi-directional conversation for the future. So, okay, great. Well, then I'll just put a pin in that.
Can I add one little thing there too?
Yeah, I'll
Sorry.
circle back around.
Yeah, as a board member, I'm the vice chair of the power committee. I found out about this expansion project one day before the public did. And as the vice chair of that committee, I asked that we, delay our decision for at least a month so that we could get some more data and understand what other alternatives were available, that type of thing. Even asked for there was a third-party consultant company that was brought in to do a report. They refused to give me the data from the third-party consultant as a board member. And I still have not gotten that data, and I still want that data.
Yeah.
And it was a 21 days from the first time I heard about it to when the board approved it. 21 days was the total, and it was a $953 million investment. There is no way that any board member should be required to make that decision and have fiduciary responsibility in 21 days. That's insane.
Right. And again, to those who are participating, especially Randy, I'll just, put a bow on that. To anybody who's participating, I know so many of our customers, and so many of our customers are C-suite lawyers, CPAs, business owners. And again, I would really challenge you to think about the fact if somebody gave you 21 days to make a $950 million investment that made environmental impacts, and you were not sharing the data with the board, you know, that wouldn't fly. So hopefully, again, you're connecting the dots, or, you know, even if you're a retired couple, who I know exists within my current customer database, you know, when one couple makes a decision and the other person doesn't have a clue of what's going on, again, it just doesn't work. So it doesn't work at the kitchen table. It doesn't work in corporate America, and it shouldn't work within a utility where we're, as ratepayers, paying in and making these decisions. There should have been a lot more transparency. So very similar to them changing the rates for our solar customers back in 2015. Fast forward, we're in the same state. So again, you know, it's important, once again, I'll make that declare that we are requesting our ballots and that we are, you know, voting for these candidates, and we'll be sending out that data after this, and I'll be sharing that here momentarily. So Krista, let's just now, if you want to add in to any of the conversation we've had thus far, whether that be with carbon, with diversity, or then even moving into that Coolidge generation, or even more specifically, again, that conversation we had earlier about the microgrids and offsetting those larger loads. So you can kind of pick and choose off that apple tree there on which to chat about.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I believe you mentioned it, but so the board voted 8-6 to approve the 16 new gas units at the Coolidge generating station. So you can see how important it is to have that board representation on the board, which is a huge push for Kathy and I to be running as new board members to get onto the board, because we can push those numbers to more in our favor for renewable energy as well, and make sure when we're making that $950 million decision that we're also thinking about how can we also invest in renewable energy, or how could we use these funds to look at a better solar incentive program. So I'll kind of move over to solar again and the microgrids, but I hear kind of all the time, like Joy, you've said it, Randy said it, Mark said it. Oh, well, I was grandfathered in and got my solar at the rate before 2015. Well, there's a lot of homeowners that have purchased homes after 2015. So how do we make sure that we can remove those barriers and increase rooftop solar for the new homeowners, and make sure that we're working to get homeowners excited about putting solar on again and providing the adequate incentives for customers. So from an SRP perspective, really homeowners using solar should be a win-win. They don't have to invest in additional land, insurance, or keep up with the maintenance of solar as well. This would typically fall under the homeowner, or if you're talking about microgrids, working with local communities or city-based structures to have like a default opt-out if you're in a community that has that energy source. Also, solar structures can help with urban heat island effect. So recent studies at ASU show that man-made solar canopies can help cool areas similarly to shade trees. So you're talking about having better community spaces that are shaded, that are cooler, let's say at city parks or outside schools, so that students have areas of relief, or people that are taking public transportation can have areas of relief as well. And I believe Mark had his hand up just a little while ago, so I don't know if he wants to hop in here as well.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I was just going to comment on the Coolidge expansion, Randolph, and I had my 3 minutes at the second Monday of September board meeting, just like many of you probably did, before I was cut off. And you know, where were the other options? I mean, all the board members were saying the same thing, Joy, that you mentioned. Like in 2015, it was just this fast railroad process, and no other options. And you got to do this. And it's October 1, and it's $957 million. Randy asked great questions as a board member. Why can't we do half now and half later? No, can't do that for obscure reasons. I'll just point out that, you know, so $957 million, no portion of that in renewables, whether it's utility scale or enabling residential solar as Krista just described, where the consumer, the customer brings all the infrastructure and operational support. So that was that, nowhere was that an option. Randy's quoted in the paper later, one of the papers later, I like his quote, every single BTU that fires our natural gas generators is imported from out of state. That is jobs lost. That's jobs lost in our utilities. That's job loss in our residential solar areas. That's what I wanted to add there.
That's great. And then I'm going to stand by really a second, and I'm going to come back around to that. For those of you who are participating and have been so gracious to listen, if you can start maybe plugging your name into the chat. I don't know if there's a raise your hand or not, because in about 5 minutes, I can just open it up to anybody who may have questions and start facilitating those. If not, I still have a plethora. So then back to you, Mark, and then I might circle back into Krista really quick. So why is it important for, because of, I could say it because it's my business model, right? So what is the science, or what information are you seeing on why it's important to get more residential customers to be able to invest in renewable energy, so that again, they're a part of the solution, right? Because so many times it's like, oh, well, they're just taking advantage of things. So, we're really not looking at the value in which distributed solar adds to the grid, adds to feeders, makes it so the utility doesn't have to pay for it. Yeah.
Right. So the problems aren't simple. They are challenging. I will admit that. There are smart people at SRP. They just need to be harnessed and given some better leadership and guidance. So, the net is that energy from the sun is free. And then after that, okay, it doesn't shine at night. There are cloudy days, only a couple of cloudy days here in the Valley of the Sun, but there are cloudy days. And so you need to solve the problem with storage. And you can do that through batteries. There's molten solar that are probably molten salt that can provide generation during peak hours when the sun isn't shining later on in the evening. So there are solutions to that. And, the team is a clean energy team, and you need to price carbon into the equation, because we're ransoming our children's and grandchildren's future. And so once you price that in, now you go over the top, and solar is far less expensive. But solar today by itself, 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Adding storage is a bit more. And what do they pay? The last I checked, 3 cents a kilowatt hour from Palo Verde Nuclear, which is the benchmark that SRP uses to pay solar customers.
Okay.
So it can be solved. We just need to keep pushing the leadership, vote, vote, vote. You hear that 100 times.
Vote, yeah.
Yeah, so Krista and Kathy, anybody in votable lands will be able to vote for them. Putting in the chat here is go request your ballot. If you're not in votable lands, I'll try to start. I will start that conversation inside the council where the bylaws are done, just like Nick Brown and Paul Hurt did in 2016, and Randy and Corey continued in 2018, and we're going to have Krista and the rest of us at the at-large, and now Randy in this district seat, promote sustainable 2035 plan, and chipped away, got a little better on the solar rate plan, gave a couple other plans, not enough, it needs to be a lot more, but it got a little better.
Yeah.
And so advances have happened, and we can do that inside the council with the bylaws and the voting.
Yeah, I do see a question. I'm just going to, again, put a bow on that conversation. It is vote, vote, vote. It is one at a time. And as I was talking to my team yesterday, we know that the net metering, rate changes will be impacted sooner or later. And it may take us 10 years to get a pro-solar SRP board. So again, there's no better time than the present to request your ballot and start participating in this, because we may not get a win. And I don't want that to be the case, right? But we may not get a win. And if we're not aggressively having these conversations now, even my customers, who've been grandfathered in and may not think that they're impacted, it's going to creep up. It's amazing how years just fly by at this point. And so it is important, again, if you're listening in, that I appreciate you for sharing that link, Mark, on where to request your ballot. If not, we'll also be sharing it, at the end of this conversation. So let me get to Carl's question. And Carl, I think you should be able to come off mute. If not, I can see that. let me just verify. It says, I'm a little confused. Randy and I are always confused about what happens at the SRP board. Who establishes the agenda for the board and who drove the accelerated timeline? I'm guessing, Carl, that you're talking about the Coolidge Generation Station.
Absolutely.
And then, okay. And then was this the one section of the board against the other?
Yeah,
So
in other words,
go for it.
yeah, in other words, is this one group that's favoring oil and gas versus another group that's favoring sustainability, or is this some group within SRP that's driving the entire decision? It's really, I'm totally new. I came into this late. I apologize.
No, you're great.
But this is the first time I've been exposed to any of this.
Yeah.
So
Well, welcome. Randy and I understand exactly where you are.
yeah.
And then and let me say this, Randy, before you give your much more educated information, since you were behind everything and you saw everything that was going on. Carl, this is what I started saying to myself about 6 months into solar policy. If you're trying to use logic to solve the problem, you should stop. So
Well, this is Arizona.
yeah, so
You don't believe
it's
in logic here.
understandable that you're confused, but with that, let me have Randy again kind of weave that and connect the dots of him and I just woke up one day and found out we were going to be spending $1 billion on solar, or on, excuse me, on the gas plants. And do you have a minute, Randy, just to go over how that 21 days happened and boom, here we are.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the question, because it's a really good question, because the board should be the one driving this decision 100%. The issue is that up until we started getting newer people onto the board has basically been a green rubber stamp for management to do whatever they wanted. So literally management would come to the board, present a presentation, and it would just be approved, approved, approved. Like literally, like almost everyone unanimously too, right? There's 14 board members. How can you have unanimous approval on almost everything? That's just crazy, right? Like there shouldn't be unanimous approval on everything. So the 8-6 vote that we got on the Coolidge expansion, you know, even though we didn't win, it was a huge change at SRP. That's like having an 8-6 vote just never happens. The other thing that I would like to say is that the vice president and the president are the ones that set the board agenda, and they are very much, I wouldn't say it's like oil or fossil fuels versus renewables necessarily. It's renewables trying to get into the fossil fuels, right? Like we currently have a fossil fuel generation fleet. That's just history, right? That's how we got here, right? The issue is that they, especially operations wise, understand how to run a fossil fuel based utility. That's what they've done for 100 years, right?
Randy,
so getting them to understand how to do renewables is difficult, and that's what we're trying to do.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
In response to that, I thought SRP was the sustainable provider in the state through hydroelectric. Is that not true?
They do have hydroelectric, and it's a very small portion of their overall generation. We have at least 6
Salt River project. Where did that change?
Yeah, so
do you know that breakdown of just, and again,
yep.
Again, Carl, you're right? Like, welcome to the dark side of the green side of energy, of just like, wait, this doesn't even make sense. But do you have that breakdown of just,
yes.
Okay,
Yep.
go.
We were just literally looking at this morning. So currently the 65% of our nameplate capacity at SRP is fossil fuels. Okay. The reason that hydro even exists at all is because SRP started off as a water company in 1903. Right. And they created the Roosevelt Dam, and they're like, hey, look, there's this water going over this thing. We should create some electricity from that. That makes sense, right? Right. And so that's how they got into hydro. And now well, since 1937, the entire operations of both the water and the electric side have been run by the electric side. Like it's fully owned by the electric side, and we just support the water side. So the water side is still technically a private association and is not even public entity at all. And the electric side is a public entity that's actually defined in the state constitution. It's actually in, I don't remember what it was, but it's the Agricultural Improvement District of the state of Arizona. So technically they're kind of like a municipality in the state of Arizona too.
Yeah, depending upon the issue in the day, they can be kind of, they're like chameleon, and they can kind of be anything that they want. There's sometimes a quasi
Exactly.
nonprofit.
They're very, very chameleon.
Yeah, they're super chameleon. Carl, I appreciate that. I can keep this conversation going. I just want to see, I only got yours in the chat. Was there anybody else that wanted to come off of mute and ask their question? If not, I'm going to go back to the others. We only have about 11 minutes left.
By the way, that was sufficient for my question. That was a good answer, Randy. Thank you.
And feel free to reach out at any time. I can go on forever.
Right. I know, right?
Randy, could
go
you
ahead.
talk a little bit again about voter turnout rates?
And why it's important. So the voter turnout rates, Randy obviously can talk about it. This is what I'll say is that I just saw just this last election in 2018, about 12,000 people requested their ballot, and sadly only about 5,500 returned it. So we have, as an SRP community, we have very low voter turnout, which is why, again, I appreciate everybody participating in this call, watching it, again, as Krista pointed out earlier, from maybe the comfort of your home later. And then we just really want to request those ballots. Was there more to that you wanted him to touch on?
I believe just voter eligibility, like only 3% of eligible voters actually vote in the election. So you kind of just said the facts and figures, but how do we make sure we're increasing that number, like Kathy was saying, to be more representative of our entire community here in the Valley?
Yeah, so, I can definitely continue that on the sense of that. I will be sharing, my team will be sharing this video. So again, those of you who are participating today, please share it with your friends. If it was, as Carl just said, a good piece of information and a nugget, please share with your friends the links that we'll be sharing on how to request a ballot. And please share with your, again, your community and your teammates on how to specifically find information about these candidates. And all of that will be shared in a screen here in a second. I did just, Mark just placed, Mark Mulligan, who's also a candidate here, just placed on the chat, much of hydropower is pumped pumped back up into the upstream reservoir using fossil fuels to ready the generation power for peak demand. So that's a big 30,000 foot statement. Do you want to add a little more color to that, Mark?
It's just a very common practice. It was just back on Carl's comments, questions about SRP. I mean, if you just imagine the Salt River project, the Salt River, if you go up across Salt River Canyon Bridge, north of Globe, and you look at that water flowing down there at any given, excepting the springtime, there really isn't that much power in the water because there's just not that much water. Yeah. And so it's great. It can fill our reservoirs and give us drinking water. Maybe a third of the valley's drinking water, give or take, comes from the saltwater watershed, other from groundwater, and other from the CAP. But for power, it's just the dams have that hydro power from that differential of the fall of the water through the turbines, but during the daytime they use fossil fuels to pump it back up into the reservoir so they don't deplete the reservoir just trying to generate power, and then let it fall at 5 or 6 p.m. at night, something like that, and then repeat the cycle the next day. So hydropower can be a kind of a misleading indicator of renewable energy, just to be aware of.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly share my screen here, mostly so that those of you, again, who I can say it out loud, but then so you can grab the details on how to get more information. So I'm going to share my screen on that really quick.
There's a thing about United Food Bank,
Okay, so I just shared my screen really quick. Hopefully you can see it.
We can.
And nothing. Can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
I tried to bring up the PDF. It didn't work. So here we are. So to research the candidates, again, if you're listening, I'll spell it out. If you're looking at this, you can just hit pause and write these down. To research the candidates, just srp.org, or excuse me, srpcleanenergy.org will drive you to their landing page where all the details are there. You can get the information about all of the candidates that have been participating in this event today. You can also provide donations. So Carl, if you are like, dang, who knew, please feel free to give as much as you can and to anybody else on the call here to these candidates. As we know, they have to drive the conversation and it requires money. So you can obtain information there, you can donate to the candidates there, and as Randy said, you can contact him through there if you have any questions. Again, that's srpcleanenergy.org/candidates or just .org, and you can get there. To request your SRP ballot, you have to go to srpnet.com/elections. Should get you there. I see /secure/early ballot. So I know Googling like SRP Board ballot typically has driven me there too, but definitely type in that URL srpnet.com/elections. Hopefully should start giving you some of that detail that is needed for you to request your ballot. Again, if you're having issues, call my office, 480-994-1440. I think I have somebody, I'll kind of mute. Sorry, y'all. And then, or call my office, and then we can get you the details that you need to be able to vote. Okay, got that taken care of. Sorry about that. So again, call my office if you have questions, hit up that link if you have questions. And obviously, again, what's important as we're closing this out, I'm going to give the candidates a few minutes just to close out their comments and ask you all to vote for them. Please, keep the dialogue going with your neighbors this weekend as you're going into the neighborhood and you're talking to your neighbors. The weather's turning nice, so if you're breaking bread, please share it all. Getting out the vote, asking for your ballots, returning those ballots immediately, very important. So with that, if we could do Randy, Krista, Kathy, and then Mark, just have you give, a last minute closing remarks, and we'll close this out.
Thank you, Joy. I really appreciate this. I think this is great that you did this, and I want to ask anybody that's willing, that if you would be willing to put, I can give you a list of people in your neighborhood that would be probably willing to vote for us if they just knew that they could, right? So if anybody wants to volunteer and wants to, just leave flyers on people's doors, you don't even have to knock on the door if you don't want to. I would appreciate if you would, but just getting the information out is all we're trying to do. So if you have anybody in your house that would volunteer to do something like that, we'd really appreciate it. The other thing we're going to really need help on is phone banks. So here pretty soon as the ballots drop on March 9th, we're going to have to chase those ballots down and try to get people to return them. Like you mentioned, only like 50% of the people that request their ballots even return them. So we need to really have people, trying to get people to return their ballots as well. So we usually do that through phone banking because it's a little faster. And I just want to let everybody know that I literally quit my job in October to 100% dedicate myself to this campaign. And I have been knocking on doors every single day, well, almost every single day since October. And I am here for the long haul and I'm not going anywhere. And we really, really need your support if you can help us out. So
Yeah.
I would really
Well,
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And on behalf of all of us and the million customers that don't know what you're all doing every day, thank you for your commitment and thank you for increasing transparency. Because again, you know, as the conversation showed, the more we know, I think the more we'll all be making better choices. So thank you so much for that. I don't know who I said, Krista or Kathy. So if one of you want to close it out on you, go, Krista.
I can jump in real quick. I think just the most important thing is to vote and try to get everyone that you can to vote as well and to register to vote. And I'll pass it to Kathy and Mark.
Thank you. And then just one shout out for you. Why should we vote for you?
I'm definitely motivated to create a more sustainable future in the Valley of the Sun. And I'm an Arizona native, and the thriving capabilities of keeping our city resilient into the future is very important to me.
Yeah, resilience is critical. Awesome. Thank you so much. Kathy?
Thank you. I would like Krista, like to invite everyone to please request their ballots and then please vote and return your ballots and vote for us. I want to remind you all that I'm also like Randy in this for the long haul. I'm concerned about climate resiliency, and I want a sustainable planet for our kids.
Yeah, thank you. Resiliency, even with what's going on globally, I get more and more, every time there's a global crisis, my phones ring because people start really getting concerned about what their future looks like. And it's not that instantaneous thing, right? It really is strategy, and it really does require thoughtful people at the lead to be really planning us into the future. So I 100% agree. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark?
Hey, I want to expand voting rights, and I want to see SRP do a much better job harnessing that free fusion reactor in the sun and the sky for our energy source.
Awesome. And then again, why, what did you say, transparency and increasing voting rights?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your jam, and that's again so critical. That is what we know, right? When we do recon, I love voting. I love political outreach. I love all of it. I've been doing it for a while. And that's what we know. We know that if people pull out the ballot, and we know that if people have the conversation, we ultimately know that we all take the right step forward.
Yeah, one comment on the voting, some of you won't be able to vote, and we feel badly about that and want to see it changed. Keep trying, or don't think that your try is not for naught, because they are being recorded at SRP. If you go to our site, we recorded. Keep a list of all those that are trying to vote and can't, and we're going to act on that data at some point.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you all for participating in this. Again, it was a quick start since I didn't record it in the beginning. This was a quick start idea that Randy and I had as I was driving down the road and started seeing signs popping up. So I appreciate all the candidates for taking time out to spread your knowledge and give us, hope for the distributed solar customers of the world, that there could be hope on the horizon as long as everybody gets out the vote. And that you're all there, fighting for all ratepayers in the SRP territory and otherwise. So with that, I'll conclude it. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the office 480-994-1440, and we'll drive you to the information. If you want to know more about these candidates, visit srpcleanenergy.org, and you'll find out about these candidates and how you can get involved, or at least request that ballot. So with that, have a great spring day, and I will see you soon. I appreciate you all. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.